To the United stand, we are joined with Ben Jacobs. Ben, thank you very much for joining us. Let's get straight into it. First thing I want to ask you is, there's been some mixed reports about Victor Gyökeres. There was a report last night that Manchester United aren't interested in the player, but then there was also reports saying that if Manchester United won the Europa League and got into the Champions League, 99% sure he would have been a United player. So, to your understanding, are Manchester United interested in signing Victor Gyökeres?
My understanding is they are interested in signing Victor Gyökeres. Obviously, it would have been simpler had they got Champions League football, but Gyökeres is open to joining the club even without Champions League football. Where there's confusion, I think, is the advancement of this deal, because Manchester United likely will focus on outgoings and then put a lot of their effort into finding a number 9 in July. That's more preferable in terms of putting that financing onto the next financial year. But also, we know, despite the fact they want to be decisive in the market, they're not going to be rash. They're not looking to do everything in the month of June. They're not in the Club World Cup. The deadline today for sides particularly involved in that tournament doesn't really have a bearing on Manchester United. So I think we're going to have to be patient with the Victor Gyökeres saga. There was a lot of excitement when I broke that Gyökeres was open to Manchester United still without Champions League football. There's been a lot of buzz about the fact that through intermediaries, Manchester United are in some kind of contact. But the reality right now is Mbeumo, they are about to place the second bid. Cunha is done, and it will ultimately be put on to the 1st of July. Gyökeres, there's been no formal approach to Sporting yet. So this is probably a saga that we are going to have to wait a few weeks on. And the only thing that will change that is if Arsenal say, OK, we don't want Benjamin Sesko, we're reverting back to Gyökeres. If Saudi come in for Gyökeres, if suddenly there's a formal bid to Sporting, then Manchester United might have to say, OK, we need to suddenly move now. But given there's been no formal bid to anybody to Sporting for Gyökeres at the time we're live, I would expect Manchester United to take their time to assess the finances, to look at outgoings. But if they can pull this deal off, then I am told that Gyökeres is a striker that they would like to bring into the club, and therefore the interest is genuine.
Would you say after, like you said, priority is Mbeumo for now, outgoings, would you say after that, when we do turn to look for that striker, would you say that he is currently Manchester United's number 1 target in that area?
I think they've got several options, only because if you have a number 1 target and you don't get it, then it's billed as failure. And clubs prefer to rank deep and have 4, 5, 6 different options, all of which they think are either gettable or will provide value. And what we're going to see different from Manchester United this window is not only a fastness in the market, but a decisiveness and maybe even a cutthroat streak under Jason Wilcox, where they won't just show their hand and bid for players early, as with Cunha and Mbeumo, but also if they feel there's no value, they'll walk away. And that's the key consideration with Gyökeres. Just because he's open and is in contact, I'm told, with Ruben Amorim, it doesn't mean if Manchester United explore it, they won't resolve it quickly and walk away. So starting by bidding for a player under this new kind of Jason Wilcox, Christopher Vivell-led model doesn't automatically mean finishing the transfer, paying what it takes, just getting it done. There will be scenarios where Manchester United say, we don't want summer sagas and we're prepared to walk away. And that's where we're at with Gyökeres at the moment. They're exploring it to determine, is it worthwhile? 70 million euros is the number I'm still told that Sporting will sell for. We've seen some reports in the last few days that this so-called gentleman's pact allowing Gyökeres to leave for 70 million euros has been reneged on by Sporting, and they're either going to ask for the 100 million euros release clause or the number's going to go above 80 million euros. That's still not my understanding. 70 million euros is the number I'm told that Gyökeres can be procured for, but then it's about the agent fees, the wages, and there will, of course, be other suitors for him as well. PSG have explored in the past. They're also looking at Victor Osimhen. That's an open race. Now, Osimhen isn't going to Saudi Arabia. We know that Arsenal, if they choose not to go for Sesko, will likely fall back on Gyökeres if Alexander Isak doesn't genuinely become available. So there's a few moving dominoes to fall in place at the moment. But the reality is Manchester United are redrawing up a list of strikers because Liam Delap was their number one choice. And it might sound strange to some fans because they're thinking, if Gyökeres wants to come and is available, pay that 70 million, get it done. Why even wasting your time first putting 45 plus 10 on Mbeumo? Take all of that money, put it on Gyökeres, get in your number 9, and then worry about a number 10. They're doing it the wrong way around. And I get that. But naturally, Mbeumo has more suitors, and the feeling is he wants to move now. And you have to respect the player in all of this too. And I'm told Gyökeres is saying, I don't want to rush. I want all suitors to come to the table. Then I'll decide where I'm going. And if you don't understand that player's perspective and wait and push and are too aggressive too fast, then it can be counterproductive. And this is also why I think Manchester United are biding their time. And then from there, who else might they add to the list? You have Alexander Mitrovic that I've mentioned before, who is expected to leave Al-Hilal if they can find a box office striker. But now I think they'll take Mitrovic to the Club World Cup instead because they haven't got Victor Osimhen. They tried for Benjamin Sesko. Player didn't want to move to Saudi. So Hilal probably won't add a box office number 9. They'll try and get a loan in for N'Golo Kante. They didn't get Bruno Fernandes, remember. And it might mean we have to wait on the Mitrovic situation. He's also got a high wage. If Manchester United went in that direction, because I've got a lot of questions on this too, it's not really about long-term permanence. It's more a short-term solution if it's economical. So maybe a loan with Al-Hilal covering some of the wages. He does a season, there's an option to buy. And that would probably be an addition to another number 9, which would be a clue to the fact that maybe there is a deal and an exit to be had for Rasmus Højlund. So Mitrovic could still be one to watch, but Manchester United haven't made a bid yet. It was an exploratory conversation. And now the door's shut in the short term because of the fact that Al-Hilal are off to the Club World Cup. Mateta's a name I constantly am asked about, as is João Pedro too. At this stage, I don't think Manchester United have made a concrete approach for either. Mateta's been discussed internally, and they're running data on some other names as well, including Hugo Ekitike, which is a new name that I can bring to the mix too. Liverpool are very interested. Chelsea have held some talks as well, but nothing's going to happen in the next days with Hugo Ekitike either. And Frankfurt want 100 million, so he's actually more expensive than Victor Gyökeres. So right now, I'm told, if Manchester United can do Gyökeres, they would like to advance on it, but it will all depend on the overall cost and other suitors. And that's why some of these other names are also concurrently being discussed.
Yeah, that's a great update, especially when there's a lot of people out there that did think the way you just put it there. Why are we not going for a striker straight away? Because that is the position we absolutely need. Whereas if Victor Gyökeres is in conversations with Amorim, like you've said, and is open to a move to Manchester United, but just wants to wait, I think maybe to see if Arsenal come to the table with the Sesko situation, then Manchester United are absolutely right to go and secure other targets before then, like Mbeumo, who we will speak about in a second. I just wanted to quickly ask you on the striker situation, because I've had so many questions about this. Victor Osimhen, now Saudi is off, is he still not a target for Manchester United?
Yeah, I think Gyökeres is more feasible than Osimhen, but it's a big surprise in the industry because many suitors, including Premier League clubs, felt that Osimhen was going to go to Saudi Arabia. We still can't discount it because just because the window closes now, it doesn't mean Saudi clubs won't return at a later point. But the key development is these type of deals in Saudi, they're not club specific. They also involve central deal makers. So it's the same kind of people when they nearly joined Al-Ali and they went for Ivan Toney. Similar people when they tried for Al-Hilal. They made Osimhen up to 5 offers, I'm told. The last one was 40 million euros net plus bonuses. And therefore, the fact it's not come off in time for the Club World Cup may mean that the central Saudi deal makers feel they've tried for 2 years. They've probably made Osimhen in excess of 10 offers over 2 years, and he's constantly got close and not gone. And now I think Saudi have lost a little bit of patience with Victor Osimhen. And what Osimhen's been able to do is leverage that Saudi money to get a very competitive offer out of Galatasaray. And they're really pushing to get this deal done. And that would be a big surprise because all indications were during the loan spell that he wouldn't end up joining Galatasaray permanently. As far as Manchester United or Chelsea fans often ask me about Osimhen as well, I'm still not aware of any concrete approach. Most suitors, like with Gyökeres, should it be 70 million, see that 75 million clause as value, and Napoli will ask for the full amount.
Oh, I think we've just lost Ben there. I think we might have just lost Ben. Yeah, we've just lost Ben. He was in the middle of a great sentence as well, finding out the end goal of Victor Osimhen. But I'll come to the chat. We'll speak for a little bit while we try and get Ben back. Well, we got the Victor Gyökeres news. If we didn't get anything else, but he should be back. He's currently just landed, actually, in Miami, I think it is, for the Club World Cup. So maybe it's the hotel Wi-Fi that's done him there. But someone said Sir Jim cut his Wi-Fi. He was saying too much. Ben, are you back, Ben?
Back, yes.
Yes. Okay, it's okay. Don't worry.
Internet on the go.
It's all right. Do not worry about it. You were in the middle of just talking about the surprise of Osimhen potentially ending up at Galatasaray and not going to one of the clubs that a lot of people probably thought would be on the table for him, like United, like a Chelsea who's now got Delap, or another European club.
Yeah, I mean, the Premier League clubs, before I was cut off, have the same perspective that Osimhen hasn't significantly dropped his wage demands. And Manchester United and Chelsea, who tried last summer, are still understanding, because the race has become more open, whether or not anything's changed. And if it hasn't, then Manchester United and Chelsea, and basically most Premier League clubs other than perhaps PSG, are not expected to come back in for Osimhen, due to the fact that he not only wants a high wage, but he doesn't want to bend into a club's incentive-driven structure and take on the risk of losing money in seasons where maybe the team doesn't succeed. So Manchester United and Chelsea have one commonality. It's newer for Chelsea. It's been quite consistent at Manchester United that in seasons without Champions League football, the players take a drop, and that protects the wage bill and allows the club to be more sustainable. And that's not a Jim Ratcliffe thing. It's always been the case under the Glazers. Victor Osimhen is saying, I want guaranteed money. So regardless of what that number is, it remains the same even without Champions League football, and it continues to rise based upon personal goals. And that means that your team may not succeed, but the player may hit targets, and suddenly the wage is going up incrementally and getting higher and higher and higher, plus the base, which never goes down, and the rest of the dressing room ultimately take a cut. And what Manchester United in the past have never wanted to do, and I think this was an issue when Cristiano Ronaldo left as well, because he had relatively good individual numbers, team didn't hit their goals. Ronaldo also didn't want to take the cut. And usually a dressing room is protected by the fact that there is this parity. So even though there's an understanding with players that some earn more, some earn less, they all agree, if you go for this model of incentive driven, to go up or down depending on how well the team does. And then naturally, some players may earn more if individually they have an outstanding season. But if you have one player coming in on big money that ultimately doesn't succeed and doesn't drop, and then it's not going well with your team, it can create disharmony. And this is why teams are reticent for Victor Osimhen. We're a lot of kind of false reporting, in my opinion, about certain numbers clubs are not prepared to pay. But Victor Osimhen wants less than Marcus Rashford's wage, less than Jadon Sancho's wage. So it's not like at pure financials, he couldn't fit into the Manchester United wage bill. It's the fact he doesn't want to bend on that structure. And Manchester United don't want to set that precedent, and nor do Chelsea, of giving one player everything he wants and then finding the rest of the squad complain, or future signings suddenly ask for exactly the same terms. And this is why we've not seen any movement yet between Premier League and Osimhen. But now Saudi's off, and if Galatasaray doesn't happen, we do need to keep an eye on the fact that European suitors could enter the race, including teams from the Premier League. I'm just not aware that Manchester United are pushing for Osimhen. And again, I come back to what I said before. Victor Gyökeres feels more feasible at this stage, financially and logistically, than Victor Osimhen. And away from Galatasaray and Osimhen, just finally, I'd once again keep an eye on PSG now this Saudi move seemingly is off, because PSG were the one club that did agree to Osimhen's financial terms 12 months ago. They had a full agreement with personal terms in place with Osimhen. And now, because Randal Kolo Muani is expected to leave and Marco Asensio will depart, the expectation is PSG will add one more striker. And they've got Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. They like the idea of reuniting Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia. And suddenly, the 80 million that PSG offered Napoli 12 months ago that was rejected is a 75 million euros release clause. So they could be one to watch as well. But it really is Galatasaray, Juventus, maybe PSG, the sides that are still pushing for Osimhen. I'm not aware of anything active between Manchester United and Osimhen at this point.
Looking more likely to be Gyökeres. Get in the chat down below how you feel about that. Ben, I want to ask you next, because this is the transfer we're focusing on now. Bryan Mbeumo had a lot of other suitors, like it has been widely reported, and we did put an initial first bid in for him, been rejected. A lot of people are waiting for this official second bid, and a lot of people have been asking me, ask Ben why this is taking so long. So, I mean, I've had people message me and say they're worried about Thomas Frank going to Spurs, about Spurs potentially luring Bryan Mbeumo away because they've now got his manager that he's worked with under Brentford. Why is it taking so long for this second bid in Manchester United? And should any of the fans be worried?
No, I don't think it's taking that long either, because what happens is you make your opening bid. It's a point of discussion. It was rejected, £45 million plus 10 million in add-ons. And then blind bidding is perhaps something that generates media traction, but it doesn't help you to just keep putting formal numbers down. What you want is that gap in between your first bid and your second bid to be finessing and negotiating, in the hope that when you place the second bid, all parties will feel it's been accepted. So it isn't a sign of progress just bidding and bidding constantly. How you get these type of transfers done is having a strong dialogue with the selling club, a good relationship, working out what you think they'll accept by finessing your first bid. And then when you actually think you've got a chance of that second bid being accepted, you place it. And if you don't think it's going to happen, you walk away. And I come back to what I said before, that under Jason Wilcox, my sense is Manchester United want quick resolutions for all transfer sagas, positive or negative. So the situation a few days ago was, it was felt Manchester United had placed another offer, and I reported that, but it was actually only verbal, not formal, which is why I clarified the situations. There hasn't been a formal second bid placed yet. But what's happening is there are conversations around a new number much closer to the Matheus Cunha valuation. And when Manchester United feel not just that number, but that structure is competitive based on their feedback from Brentford, and all of those discussions are ongoing at the moment, the expectation, and quite imminently, is they will then put that formal second bid in with a higher percentage chance, hopefully from Manchester United's point of view, that it will be accepted. And it's not just about the number, it's about the structure. I say this all the time during the window, because in the first bid, the 10 million in add-ons were too skewed towards Champions League qualification. And my understanding is that Brentford want these add-ons to be more Mbeumo framed, because they back the player to get appearances or goals. That will trigger appearances. If it's all contingent on qualifying for the Champions League, then Brentford feel they might have to wait a little bit longer in order to get that money. So this is another point of discussion, not just what the number is, but how easy the add-ons are, and also whether they're tied to the player or whether they're tied towards club success. And all of that is ongoing. So the radio silence from the fans' perspective is misleading, because it's not a case of they're just delaying bidding. They're working with Brentford verbally in negotiations to understand what this package is going to look like. So when they do bid, it can be with more confidence. And there's a fact that they don't need to rush the actual finalisation. The same with Cunha, whose contract is going to start on the 1st of July, because clearly if this deal gets done, they'll want to put that financing onto the financial year 2025-2026 rather than do it now, which will make their PSR position a little bit more complicated. Regarding the Spurs part in all of this, you can never say definitively that Thomas Frank won't influence Tottenham's transfer business. But my understanding is very clear as of now that Tottenham know Mbeumo's preference is Manchester United, as do all other suitors. And when you allocate your targets and decide where you want to move in the market, just because a new manager comes in, especially under Daniel Levy, it's very unlikely that they'll turn around to Thomas Frank and say, is us getting Mbeumo a deal breaker, a number one priority? Can you influence the situation? Can you go out there and somehow hijack Manchester United's plans? Tottenham will be more considered in their recruitment, and Frank will not have any outright autonomy anyway. So I'm not expecting Thomas Frank's expected arrival at Tottenham to hugely influence the Mbeumo situation. The most important thing in this narrative is Mbeumo has said clearly he wants to join Manchester United. And my expectation is still, if the clubs agree a fee, then Mbeumo, regardless of the Tottenham situation, and if they do or don't move, will still pick Manchester United. So this is not about a worry of what Spurs may do. It's more about, can Manchester United agree a fee with Brentford? Where there's always a worry in a transfer is, as you get a higher volume of suitors, does someone try their luck for Mbeumo and go at a higher number? And then are Manchester United prepared to match that? And this is why I think they'll want clarity sooner rather than later, because right now they're the only club negotiating with Brentford, and therefore they don't have to look over their shoulder and fear another club might put a number that's bigger than they want to pay. But as time ticks away, suitors in any transfer that maybe think a deal is locked start to go, is it worth us trying our luck? Are Manchester United struggling to agree a fee here? So it's simpler if Manchester United can get Mbeumo done quicker. But regardless of everything, if United agree a fee with Brentford and Spurs were to somehow enter the race and agree a fee with Brentford, and then Mbeumo was to have a straight choice between the two clubs, I'm still told he will pick Manchester United.
That is exactly what we want to hear. So thank you for bringing that good news to us. We have some super chats in that I'll read out. Zlazy says, do you think Gyökeres has a gentleman's agreement with both Sporting and Amorim, and that's the reason other top clubs aren't chasing him?
No, I don't think it's that advanced. Again, I don't want to mislead people here. My reporting on Gyökeres is simple. He's open to Manchester United without Champions League football. But we're not at a point yet where Gyökeres has decided his sole club, like Mbeumo has said he wants to join Manchester United. We're certainly not at a point where Manchester United have discussed personal terms with the player. And we're definitely not at a point where Manchester United have placed any kind of bid to Sporting at this stage. There's no gentleman's agreement between Gyökeres and anybody. The player, like I said before, is waiting to assess his options. And if, as a potential buyer, you force the issue with a player and say, decide now, here's a deadline, we want it done tomorrow, and the player turns around and says, I want to go on holiday and think about it, you're going to be in a weaker position because you've not respected the fact that the player's telling you he wants to bring in all offers, think about it with his family and his network, then decide. It was the same with Michael Elise, who said, don't come to me, come to Crystal Palace, go through the front door, lay out all the options. Then Elise said, he'll decide who he wants to join or speak to. And I think Gyökeres is going to be very similar. He will invite expressions of interest, and then he will give a timeline. Liam Delap was the same, and Manchester United respected that process. In the end, he joined Chelsea, but United made a strong pitch. They might have even succeeded there if they'd have won the Europa League final. So sometimes I think fans just wake up each morning and they want new news, and they don't understand why their club in 24 hours hasn't done anything, because they're like, isn't the 9-to-5 job that they're supposed to be focused on this one transfer? But if the player side are giving you clear indication, here's how we want the timeline to go, and then you're too over aggressive, you might end up losing out. And I think, to be honest with you, that's what's happened with Victor Osimhen and Al-Hilal, where Osimhen's gone, I'm not that fussed about the Club World Cup. I want to go on holiday. I want to think long and hard. Then I'll give you an answer, and it will probably come in July. Whereas Hilal was saying, you've got 24, 48, 72 hours to decide. They did the same with Bruno Fernandes as well. And this can be bullish, and it can certainly create media headlines. And if you succeed, you get a lot of praise for being decisive. But look at Al-Hilal. They didn't get Bruno Fernandes. They put pressure on him. He didn't want to decide that quickly, or he simply wasn't interested in the end in the move. Same for Osimhen. Lots of offers, didn't join. Theo Hernandez didn't join. Ederson didn't join. Barella didn't join. Angelino didn't join. And now they're having to do a loan deal from within PIF. It should be fantastic if it comes off, but their last minute solution is N'Golo Kante. So coming back to Manchester United, if Victor Gyökeres is saying very clearly, stop bugging me because I want a bit of a holiday and time to think, then the right approach is actually to do nothing and respect that, because in the long run, that might mean when he does want to engage, you suddenly have a better relationship and a stronger chance of advancing this type of deal.
Yes, I understand that. I've not actually really thought of it from that point of view before, so it's good to kind of get the player's perspective on that. A lot of people as well are asking in the chat, any news on the goalkeeper situation, because we spoke about Emi Martinez and Onana not being told of his place being in jeopardy at Manchester United, but there is that feeling that Manchester United might be looking for a new number one. Is there any updates on the goalkeeper situation, Ben?
Yeah, Onana's going to hold talks with the club because he hasn't been told directly that he's surplus to requirements. But my understanding is it's an open situation and there is a possibility that at the right price and with the right opportunity, Onana is moved on. We know the original Manchester United plan was only around Bayern and then finding a number two. And that was where, for example, a link with Joan Garcia came from. But Garcia said very clearly to Arsenal and to Manchester United, he only wants to be a number one. And as a consequence, Barcelona are going to do that deal unless there's any surprises. But that first profile of goalkeeper United were looking for was young competition for Onana, but not to come in and be the number one right away. Now they're looking at both options. So still a possibility that only a young number two comes in for the long term. But also if the right profile of goalkeeper is made available, a chance Manchester United do sign a number one. The Onana side went to the postseason tour with a lot of speculation. They then did a special sub-activation in India, which was seen as only players selected that were kind of part of the project, because you know what postseason or pre-season is like. If you're using faces visibly, it's not normally the ones that you're planning to move on, because you want to be able to brand the club in a way and have kind of longevity over all these activations, such as kit launches or visits. So it is a clue usually when a player appears regularly in the off-season or in the pre-season that they are part of the plans. And that's what Onana's thinking at the moment. He wants to stay. He wants to remain the number one. It's going to be difficult to persuade him to leave. But Manchester United concurrently are looking at goalkeeper targets. And if they find one, then suddenly Onana's perspective may have to change a little bit, because if there's competition or a so-called replacement that comes in, does he have to reassess? And it's an open situation at this stage, therefore. Regarding Emi Martinez, Manchester United have made exploratory approaches on the player side to understand what Martinez is looking for, because the expectation is between now and possibly the financial deadline, but certainly the first game of the season, Villa may entertain a sale. And this is partially down to their PSR position, and maybe also the fact that Emi Martinez is open to a new challenge as well, and not one necessarily with Champions League football. I think Villa's finances will be a lot more obvious in the next few weeks. 12 months ago, when Newcastle were in this position, there was all manner of speculation about, is it 15 million, 50 million, or 100 million they really need to bring in? And of course, Newcastle sources are always going to show optimism and not create a panic in the market, because otherwise people are going to take advantage of them. And Villa are the same at the moment. It's Martinez is well contracted. Morgan Rogers is not for sale. Ollie Watkins they want to keep. But people are going to start trying their luck now to test whether, despite the football plan being to hold on to these stars, financially they're forced to sell one of them. And my understanding with Martinez is that it was a bit of a wave goodbye at the end of the season. So there is a concrete chance that he exits elsewhere. And along with Manchester United, you've got Atletico Madrid as well, who are definitely ones to watch, because Jan Oblak could be moved on as well. So keep an eye on that Martinez situation, because it might move in the coming weeks due to Villa's financial position. I don't think they want to sell Yuri Tielemans despite Saudi interest. I really think Morgan Rogers is untouchable at this stage, despite genuine interest from Chelsea and Arsenal. And the challenge with Ollie Watkins is, even if you get good money for him, you probably got to invest more than you bring in to find a Watkins replacement. And it's counterproductive, therefore, financially, getting a nice fee, but then having to spend more than that fee on another player. If 30, 40 million was secured for Emi Martinez, Villa might feel that they can find a replacement goalkeeper for less, and that sale would reflect positively on their books. So this is why, as we build up to the end of the financial year, the Emi Martinez situation is definitely going to be one to watch.
And then with Mike Maignan and Chelsea seeming to be off now, is that another name that Manchester United could maybe explore?
I don't think so. I'm not aware of anything between Manchester United and Mike Maignan. The logic, I think, if Manchester United entered a race like that, would be to pre-agree a deal and then land a player of that caliber on a free transfer and then maybe stick with Onana for at least another season. I don't think Manchester United see value in the Milan asking price. What we should say about the Maignan situation with Chelsea is it was Milan, to my knowledge, that offered Maignan to Chelsea because they need the finances. They've got no Champions League football. The player wants a new challenge. And he made it clear to Milan he's not going to sign a renewal. So they're now forced with a situation where they've either got to sell now or risk losing him on a free transfer in 12 months' time. But Chelsea saw no value in the 25 million asking price. They were only prepared to pay half that, around 12 million. And the deal is not expected to happen between now and the 7 o'clock deadline this afternoon. Manchester United, I think, have got other goalkeepers in mind if they choose to replace Onana. I also don't think they would see value in 25 million for a 29-year-old with 1 year left on his contract. But if we get towards the end of the window and Maignan is still a Milan player, keep an eye on that kind of January to next summer period, because it's a completely different scenario. If a club like Manchester United is still looking for a number one, Onana's still at the football club, and suddenly you can pre-agree a deal with Maignan for a free transfer, then there'll be a lot of suitors, I think, that are very interested in the French goalkeeper. But for now, I'm not aware of any interest, any approach, anything developing between Manchester United and Maignan. It's solely Chelsea who are at the table, and it is now a deal that is not expected to happen for them.
I'm going to circle back to some incomings in a second, but I want to ask you about Alejandro Garnacho. There was reports coming out yesterday that Arsenal potentially are looking at him, Chelsea leading the race. The preference from the player is to stay in the Premier League, but Napoli are still looking into him. What's your understanding on the Garnacho situation as of now, and what clubs are in that race for him? Villa, I think, was mentioned as well, but I don't know, like you said, about finances on their side.
Yeah, Villa could be one to watch for sure, because they're looking to strengthen on that left side from Garnacho's point of view. I think he's open to all offers. I'm not aware that he's said Premier League or nothing. Actually, he was quite keen on a move to Napoli in January, so that shouldn't be discounted. Napoli's preference is to get De Bruyne over the line and then look at a left-sided winger, and Garnacho remains one to watch. The challenge there is Napoli's valuation is £42 million or 50 million euros, and Manchester United want quite a lot more and will be hoping for a bidding war. It'll be interesting to see, because it's played out so public that Amorim wants to sell Garnacho and it's pure profit on the books. So therefore, a selling club will be thinking there's a deal there to be had below this £60 million or more number that was bandied about in the market in January. So I'm not sure that Manchester United are in as strong a position to stick to their valuation on Garnacho, because it's obvious that it suits all parties for him to exit. And Napoli will likely play on that, but wait first for the De Bruyne deal to be fully formalised, because there's always that worry that Chicago Fire will push and put a spanner in the works. But I think Napoli think De Bruyne is done. And then the number one priority will be to find a left winger. With Chelsea, they have Garnacho on their list, but what I would say is they're advancing at the moment on Jamie Gittens at Dortmund, and talks are relatively advanced there. A £30 million bid has been rejected already. I don't think this is one that Chelsea expect to happen in the next few hours, but it's very likely that Chelsea place another bid for Jamie Gittens, and Dortmund want to sell because he's not seen as a fit within their system. So there remains optimism that Chelsea can land Gittens. Are they going to do two on the left side? I say likely not, but there is that slight question mark because of the fact that Giovanni Quenda doesn't arrive until 2026 and is seen as a left winger, not a wing back. Mikhailo Mudrik's banned for now and states his innocence, but regardless of outcome, that's going to take time. And now Sancho's left as well. So they're actually too short on the left side. But I think because Quenda is pre-agreed for 2026, Chelsea will probably only do one, which means if Gittins joins, Garnacho becomes not impossible, but very unlikely. And yes, Villa, I'm told, are one to watch simply because they want to strengthen over on that left-hand side. They are not going to take the 40 million option for Marcus Rashford, who wants to join Barcelona. And now we have to understand whether they could do a deal early or they'll have to more likely wait until after the financial year ends. But keep an eye on Villa because they do want to strengthen with a wide attacker on that left-hand side. So there might be more than one Premier League opportunity for Alejandro Garnacho if it is indeed his preference to stay in the Premier League, although I'm not hearing Premier League or nothing is the player's position.
Did you hear anything about Arsenal being interested?
No, not yet. Arsenal are determining striker situation first, then they'll move on to the left-hand side. We know that Arsenal have also had Gittins on their list and looked at Nico Williams. They even took a brief look at Matheus Cunha, but they kind of felt like he wasn't exactly a left winger or an out-and-out number 9. And obviously Manchester United agree because they will utilise Cunha as a 10. So Andrea Berta, I think, wants a defined touchline hugging left winger who can provide goals output, even though they've actually got Martinelli and still Trossard over on that left side, but Raheem Sterling's returned to Chelsea. So there will be Premier League interest in Garnacho. Let's see how it develops. I don't think it's a today-tomorrow saga that's necessarily going to be resolved. But what will be worth noting is how hard and early Manchester United try and push this one. Because if you're a suitor, I think you have to understand what's gone wrong at Manchester United, do your due diligence on the player, and negotiate quite tough to try and get Manchester United to come down on price. And all of that would likely imply time is needed. But if Manchester United want that pure profit and to not come back to pre-season and have Garnacho as part of the group, then actually maybe they would be more inclined to try and speed things up a little bit. So that's just one to watch, how hard Manchester United offer Garnacho to clubs and how quickly it's resolved. Whereas I think from the selling club's point of view, if the valuation stays at 60 million plus, we might have to be a bit patient to separate interest from concrete bids because a lot of people out there see that as too high a valuation.
It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Another player, Rasmus Højlund, you mentioned him at the start of the show. A lot of reports coming out about interest from Inter Milan, and that's been going on for quite a few weeks now. But then also reports that it's the player's preference to stay at Manchester United. Do you think that there's a real possibility that Rasmus Højlund could leave this summer?
I think Manchester United see it as a realistic possibility that he could leave. The player's position is clear that he wants to stay and fight for his place. It's easy to say that now. It maybe changes if another striker comes in. And that's the beauty of the window, really, from Manchester United's perspective. If they can add and strengthen in different areas, then they will also be able to facilitate outgoings because maybe a player that was intent to stay whilst they knew that they had a straight pathway suddenly realises they're further down the pecking order. So I think there's a concrete chance that Rasmus Højlund does depart. There is genuine interest from Inter. The major obstacle is book loss, and therefore the structure of any deal is going to be quite interesting. I think Manchester United would love naturally just to bring in big money, sell, and then have a striker. But if that big money is less than they've paid, you've got book loss. It doesn't reflect well. It puts you in a further financial bind. And therefore we might be in Anthony Bettis or Rashford Villa type territory where actually it's a loan with some kind of option or obligation to offset the wage to bring in short-term income from that loan fee with the possibility or definiteness of a purchase further down the line. And if Højlund goes, then Manchester United will have to be flexible on that type of structure simply because of the fact that everyone offering permanent solutions now are making numbers of valuation so far lower than what Manchester United paid that financially it wouldn't be worth their while to sell permanently unless somebody chooses to up that bid significantly.
Yeah, that'll be another interesting one because, as you say, certain transfers start off in a way at the start of the window and then they can drastically change as it gets further into the window. So that could be one to watch there. But it is interesting to see what will happen with Rasmus Højlund, especially when you mentioned the likes of the Gyökeres and even Mitrovic potentially as a backup at the start of the show. And now I want to ask you about a question that keeps coming into the chat. We've got a lot of super chats and a lot of them mention, Ben, midfield for Manchester United. Midfield is one that Manchester United fans have a lot of questions about because we feel like we need a midfielder, and I think Amorim feels like we need a midfielder, but I get the sense it's maybe not too high up the transfer list. Are Manchester United exploring the possibility of bringing in a midfielder, and is there any names that we are looking at as of now?
Yeah, I think a midfielder is a possibility, but not a priority. As you say, that technically, if you're going to add 2 10s, you're bringing 2 into midfield, but like a deeper lying midfielder, box to box, or even a defined 6 could be a possibility. Right now, I think Ruben Amorim feels Manuel Ugarte is only going to get better and better and is a good fit for the system. And as I've said many times, my expectation is that Kobbie Mainoo stays at the football club and ends up signing a new deal. Certainly the player, despite links with Chelsea, isn't looking for a move away. There's a few names that they've explored without necessarily calling it a priority at this stage. Atlanta's Ederson has always been a profile appreciated by those at Manchester United. Al-Hilal, like I mentioned before, made an approach for him. Manchester United were also one of the clubs, if we're talking about a more advanced kind of player, that were offered the chance by West Ham to sign Mohamed Kudus, but they didn't bite. Chelsea were approached as well. And the West Ham perspective is that Kudus can leave. He has an £85 million release clause for Premier League clubs, £80 million for European clubs, 120 for Saudi clubs. But in the outreach from West Ham to Chelsea, to Manchester United and to others, they have very much been asking whether Kudus would be of interest in return for players going the other way. So I'm not aware which Manchester United players were suggested, but what I do know is that it was a West Ham initiated approach to Manchester United for Kudus, not the other way around. That's an important point to note, and it's unclear whether anything will develop. And then I think Wilfred Ndidi is another name that I'm hearing newer that I can add to the radar that Manchester United are considering. Everton have Ndidi on their radar, and Al Ahly are interested as well. The thing about Ndidi, I think, is he won't necessarily be the go-to now advanced choice for a club like Manchester United. It's more, there is huge value in the 9 million relegation release clause since Leicester went down, and Manchester United are aware of that. So I don't think they're moving at this point, because if they strengthen in midfield, which will come later in the window, there's other targets very much ahead of Ndidi. But Manchester United are well aware that that 9 million number is low value and good value for a player with a lot of Premier League experience that could maybe become a squad player. So it might be one to keep an eye on. But right now, I think it's other clubs, for example, Everton, really pushing. And it will be a surprise if in the next 6 weeks or so, by the time clubs kind of get back to the middle or back end of pre-season, if somebody hasn't made a concrete offer for Ndidi, because that 9 million number feels too valuable for a team not to bite. And Ndidi naturally would prefer to be back in the Premier League or in the top flight rather than playing in the Championship.
Is there any truth in the rumours that Manchester United would like to move Casemiro on?
I'm not aware of wanting to move Casemiro on in terms of a football-driven decision, but we know that Manchester United would be open to a Casemiro exit at the right price just because of the player's age and wage. He's still well contracted, so we're not talking about forcing the player out, but it's definitely true, even dating back to before Jim Ratcliffe, that Manchester United were out there when John Murtough was kind of involved, offering Casemiro to places like Saudi Arabia and beyond. So I think officially it's a case of Casemiro is valued for his leadership, his football skills, his relationship with Ruben Amorim, which I'm told is strong. But financially speaking, if the right offer came in and the right target was there to strengthen in midfield that offer could fund, then I do think Manchester United would give due consideration to a Casemiro sale, just simply because fee plus wage equals another positive reflection on the books. And a bit like Bruno Fernandes to Saudi, a bit like Garnacho, one exit of that nature, and you might be able to fund 2 or 3 bits of business.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of people in the chat asking me about, I feel like this is a little bit of a fan theory, but I'll just bring it to you anyway, asking about a Sancho and Amadou Onana from Aston Villa. That sort of swap may be happening with Aston Villa rumoured to be interested in Sancho, and Onana obviously being a midfielder that is quite highly rated.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Amadou Onana and Manchester United yet. I think we will see these mirrored deals, 2 separate deals done at the same time between clubs, because as 12 months ago, it's a way of getting around tight PSR positions. So you definitely can't discount if Aston Villa come calling for a Manchester United player. Manchester United being alert to the opportunity of a Villa one, but I've not heard that Amadou Onana link yet. Let's see whether that develops over the coming weeks. What I think you will see with Sancho is a push still from Dortmund to try and sign him. And a lot will depend on the player, because it's very telling that Chelsea's preference was to keep Sancho. They basically made him an offer that was similar to the wage that they were paying during the loan, because remember, Manchester United were contributing about £125,000 a week and Chelsea were paying the rest. So Chelsea essentially said to Sancho, we'll match what we're paying you now, but it's got to be incentive driven, going up or down depending on Champions League football or not. They couldn't agree terms. They pay the 5 million, Sancho returns to Manchester United. Now, Dortmund or any other suitor like Villa will have to understand whether Jadon Sancho is prepared to drop his wage to that kind of Chelsea number, because from what I'm told, Sancho would have liked to stay at Chelsea. He was happy there. He liked Enzo Maresca, and yet they couldn't agree terms, which means wages for Villa, if they were to enter the race for Sancho, are still likely to be a problem, and possibly the same for Dortmund as well. So again, we're in another scenario where Manchester United's position this early in the window is very clear, that Antony is for sale, not loan, that Sancho is for sale, not loan, that Rashford is for sale, not loan. But as time ticks away, it might be quite hard for them to do all 3 as permanent sales. So if they can get one through the door with permanence and money, then maybe as the window ticks along, there's more flexibility over finding a solution for another. And my sense from speaking to sources at Manchester United is still that as the financial picture becomes clearer and maybe there's a bit more leeway to spend from July onwards, we might see a situation where asking prices or structures of deals change. Still for Manchester United to get the deals they're looking for, nothing so cut price or bending to the whim of a seller. But if they brought in 40 million Barcelona Rashford, then maybe that unlocks the door for more options for Sancho, because another loan might be possible. But what they won't do right now is just give the players what they want. Antony loan back to Betis, Rashford to Barcelona, loan with an option to buy, Sancho to Dortmund, loan with an option to buy, because that's counterproductive. It doesn't help Manchester United in terms of bringing in the money that they need. And it's so early in the window that I expect them to stay quite firm on asking prices. And then we have to understand which one of these deals maybe gets done first, because it might impact the kind of structure or price relating to the others.
Yeah, I mean, with Jadon Sancho, especially with Gittins potentially going to Chelsea, that does make sense, because that's where he's played his best football. They have a good relationship, the club and the player. But like you said, if he didn't want to accept the wages at Chelsea, even though he was happy there, then Dortmund would struggle as well. And it might be Manchester United having to pay a lot of them off as part of the transfer fee. Maybe that might happen. I mean, we've got another super chat in here asking about reports linking us to Palhinha. Anything in that?
Palhinha could be a player that departs, but again, not heard too much on the Manchester United front there. Once again, the focus is Mbeumo and number 9. They'll look at the goalkeeper and the midfield situation, and another wing-back is possible. And there's a concrete link, as I revealed before, with Pervis Estupiñán. Brighton haven't had an approach yet, but he's a name on the list as well. So right now, we're hearing a lot of names out there, and Manchester United are certainly active, much more so than they have been in the early parts of previous windows. But this is not a mad rush to find a player in every position. This is about, can they get Mbeumo over the line? Can they get a number 9? Can they find a solution for Rasmus Højlund? Can they get the outgoings we've mentioned? Everything else, like midfielder, defensive reinforcements, even number 1 goalkeeper, probably going to come a bit later in the window.
Yeah, well, I was literally just about to ask you to wrap the show up about the wing-back and any update on Estupiñán, because I think that would be a great player to bring in, personally. I understand a lot of Manchester United fans are thinking, well, we just bought Dorgu. Dorgu can play both sides, can't he? He has played on the right under Amorim and played on the left as well. And you've got to remember, he's quite young. Estupiñán got that Premier League experienced player. I think he's, 27, 28? Do you think Brighton would be open to selling? And do you know any ballpark region about what they'd expect price-wise?
No, I don't know any ballpark price yet. Brighton are always, in theory, open to selling, but they don't go and put prices out there. It has to suit all parties. So the good news when you deal with Brighton is that you know there's deals to be had. The bad news is they normally get incredible money.
They're very good, aren't they?
So if you think Gyökeres sale was 62.5 million, I don't think it'd be quite that high for Estupiñán, but probably used as a rough kind of yardstick, and that's likely out of Manchester United's price range, although that 62.5 million for Gyökeres was including add-ons as well. Not a player necessarily that Brighton want to lose right away, but again, if the player has an opportunity and it's right for Brighton financially, you can always do a deal with them. But they're not the kind of club that goes out there when you call them up and says, yes, this player's for sale, here's the price. They have a conversation with you. You often have to bid a bit blind. They have a private number in mind. If that private number's hit and the player wants the move, then absolutely the deal is on. They won't unduly stand in their player's way. And it'll be the same with João Pedro, by the way, and various suitors, including Newcastle United. But it's not easy to get that number out of Brighton. And again, that type of deal is likely to come later in the window, to my understanding, rather than right away. And I think you're right in what you say, Beth, that it is a bit surprising. Estupiñán, Dorgu's there, Diego Leon is arriving, Luke Shaw's on that left-hand side. But Dorgu can switch sides, as you correctly say, and Ruben Amorim is looking for dynamism from his fullback, pace, physicality, players that can cover more than one position. And this is where the speed is important too, because if you're a fullback that bombs forwards, then you have to be able to get back. But similarly, he may want that left-sided fullback to have the possibility of either inverting or covering a more central position, allowing others to push further forwards in this system as well, but still have that speed of mind and thought to get back to the left-hand side. And even though it's not that watched or seen, if you ever want to do something geeky, like I sometimes do when I'm prepping for commentary, I watch a video of a player and his movement off the ball, and you can get various different angles now these days. And if you look at Estupiñán, when he's basically not part of an attacking phase, he's so disciplined in the position he takes up to be ready to move. He's so alert to moving into space, even before the ball is maybe switched to his side. And he's also constantly looking and gesturing at others to ensure that the back line is in line, that the passing is progressive. He shows a lot of leadership and does a lot of unsung work off the ball, often that comes to nothing because you're watching him at times and phases where, for whatever reason, the ball doesn't reach him. But he's incredibly intelligent, he's very athletic, and he's fast. And from wide players, wingers and fullbacks, my understanding is that Ruben Amorim has made it clear to Jason Wilcox and Christopher Vivell, we're lacking that athleticism and we're lacking that speed in wide areas. And this is why I think if Manchester United strengthen, you will find fast and physical players are added.
See, that's what I like to hear as well, and I think that was a great summary of Estupiñán. I think before his injury last season, he was up there for being team of the season. I think at the left back position for a lot of people, he was absolutely top quality. Lastly, just because a couple of chats said, and then I'll let you get off to Miami. I am so jealous. Lastly, Theo Hernandez thought he was going to Al-Hilal. not happened, a lot of people are looking at the price of 30 million euros and thinking, hello, why are Manchester United not looking at that? Is there any links at all?
No links yet, but a good price, as you say, 27 years of age as well, so a decent profile. I think the Saudi interest in Theo Hernandez was kind of escalated for the Club World Cup, and we can't discount post-Club World Cup them trying to pick it up. But from what I gather, they agreed a price in principle, and then they failed to agree terms with the player, I should say. So I think Theo Hernandez probably wants to stay in Europe. I'm not aware of anything on the Manchester United front yet, but I would keep a very close eye on Atletico Madrid, because I think they are actively working on that deal.
And any chance at all of Luke Shaw departing, or do you not think that's going to be a possibility with his wages?
I mean, I'm not hearing anything on a Luke Shaw departure at this point. I think that he's happy to stay. Naturally, if Estupiñán arrived, you'd start to think they've got quite a lot of options over on that left-hand side. But there's nothing yet that suggests to me that Luke Shaw is planning for a United departure, or that Manchester United are putting him on the market. The priority is going to be for Luke Shaw to get through next season fit, playing as many minutes as possible, because we know that a fit Luke Shaw still has huge value to Manchester United.
Thank you very much, Ben. Really appreciate all the updates. Hopefully, next time we speak, there might be a second Mbeumo bid officially launched, and we might even be close to getting that deal over the line, or we might have already got it over the line, who knows. But thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the Club World Cup. We will speak to you soon, of course we will. And yeah, thank you to everyone in the chat as well for all of your amazing comments, all the super chats. But yeah, thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to speaking next time, and hopefully Manchester United can have a busy few weeks ahead.
Yes, that is exactly what we want. Make sure you smash a like on the video, everyone. Thank Ben in the comments for his time, and we will see you on the next one.